Dear colleagues, dear friends, my name is Sandra Radenovic, and I'm professor of sociology of sport at the University of Belgrade, Faculty of Sport and Physical Education. And I want to say that I'm very honored to be the part of this international scientific conference under the title Novelties in Sport Sciences. I'm going to expose the plenary lecture under the title Bioethics and Sport Meeting Points. So I will start with my lecture. And first, I want to say that I divided this lecture in different parts. So in the first part, I will expose the meaning of the professional sport, the sport as the part of the physical culture system. In the other part, I will expose something about bioethics, the definition of bioethics. Then I will talk about bioethics of sport, the meaning, the definitions. Also, I will mention the sociology of sport as the special sociological discipline. And at the end, I will expose the burning meeting points between bioethics and sport. So, according to different authors, according to different sociologists of sport, sport is multidimensional and complex phenomenon. So the field of sport, the field of professional sport is very large, it's complex, and also sport is the part of the physical culture system beside the recreation and beside the physical education. So the backbone, in fact, an essential element of sport is competition. The field of sport includes, that's why the field of sport includes social, historical, psychological, economic, political, pedagogical, medical, ethical, philosophical, religious, environmental, cultural, legal, technical, technological, aesthetic, and numerous other aspects. Mentioned aspects, in fact, are the subject of the study of humanities, sociology, psychology, pedagogy, etc., etc. And in this plenary lecture, we will focus on the bioethical and sociological aspects of professional sports. The importance of the bioethical sport as a philosophical discipline and a wider interdisciplinary field is also the part of this lecture that I will expose in next few minutes. So let's continue. What is bioethics? Bioethics is defined as an interdisciplinary academic and intellectual field that is defined in the broadest sense as the ethics of life. So when we say ethics of life, we keep in mind the different levels of life. So we have, I mentioned here, for example, level of unborn life, level of everyday life of each individual, level of life of future generations, level of survival of plant and animal species, etc. So bioethics, so this is a so-called integrative definition of bioethics, and bioethics deals with those values and norms that concern good and evil, right and wrong, in the context of life in general, and its many forms, human and non-human, at the all mentioned levels of life. Also, I will mention that there are many definitions of bioethics. So every bioethicist has its own definition, but it's integrative, some kind of integrative bioethics because it's integrate all those levels of life and also different perspectives for considering life as such. and also good and evil, right and wrong. Bioethics of sport is a part of bioethics, and also it's part of philosophy of sport. And we have two meanings. We have first narrow sense and narrow definition of bioethics of sport, and we have also broader sense, broader definition of bioethics of sport. So in narrow sense, it's critical consideration of doping, bribery, and corruption in professional sports. And also it includes, in fact, it considers problem of medical ethical principles in professional sports. For example, the principle of informed consent addressed to an injured athlete by a sports medical doctor, as well as ethical dilemmas in choosing between regular and good medical recovery and rapid recovery of the athlete in order to return to the field, in fact, trainings and matches, as soon as possible. So we can see that this narrow sense includes that critical consideration of doping, bribery, and corruption in professional sports. So these are different problems that we are faced with in professional sports, but also it includes the part of medical ethical principles, in fact, the sports medicine. So it is a narrow sense, but at the other side, we have that broader sense of bioethics of sport. And this broader sense, as you can see, it includes all those ethical aspects of sport, both in sports medicine and in humanities, such as the sociology of sport. Here we are interested in sociology of sport. So these ethical aspects within the field of sociology of sports are numerous. So ethical aspects of the context and social conditioning of sport. Second, the impact of society on sport, and vice versa, the impact of sport and society. So this is the very complex relationship between professional sports and the whole society. Third, we have ethical aspects of numerous interactions between all elements of a sports event. So every sport event has three, in fact, it consists of three elements. These are players, in fact, the players, athletes. The second element, these are mediators, such as sports journalists. And the third part of every sport event is sport audience, so fans and sport audience in a broader sense. So we have different ethical aspects of numerous interactions between all mentioned elements of every sport event. So let's continue with the fourth point: ethical aspects of sports reporting by sport journalists as the most important mediators of every sports event. Ethical aspects of the connection between national identity and sport. So this is very, very attractive and very important issue regarding our region and regarding ethnicity, regarding ethnic nationalism, etc., etc. And that's why for our sociologists of sport here from Serbia and from region, these are very, very important issues regarding national identity and sport. And for bioethics bioethics of sport. Ethical aspects of that connection between national identity and sport is one of the most important issues. Also, the same situation is with the problem of racism in sports, in professional sports. Not only in our region, all over the world, we have that problem, unfortunately, but these are the social facts. And also the representation of women in sports and gender inequalities in sports. These are also very important and very attractive and actual issues in contemporary bioethics of sport. And now I will also mention the sociology of sport, just to remind our colleagues and friends who are listening this lecture. Sociology of sport is a special sociological discipline that studies sport as a complex socio-cultural and historical phenomenon and the relationship between sport and society. On previous slide, in previous part, I mentioned the impact of society on sport and vice versa, the impact of sport on society as one issue of bioethics of sport, but also this is the maybe the cornerstone of sociology of sport as a special sociological discipline, that issue regarding the relationship, complex relationship between professional sport and society. Bioethics of sport, so bioethics of sport in its broadest sense, as I mentioned in previous slide, interferes with the sociology of sport. So that was it was for example issue that is some kind of meeting point, ethical aspects of the context and social conditioning of sport, also the impact of society of sport and vice versa, the impact of sport on society. So we can see that places, in fact, some kind of meeting points where bioethics of sport in its broadest sense interferes with the sociology of sport. Also regarding the topics related to professional sports and the complex relationship between sports and society. So these are also, this is also kind of meeting point. And also we just have to mention also one social fact, and it is unstoppable development of medicine and technological development of the last few decades. And that unstoppable development has brought with itself certain new problems and ethical dilemmas, both at the level of global society and in the field of professional sports. So that ethical dilemmas are also the issues for bioethics of sport, but also the issues for sociology of sport. So we have some examples here. We have little time here to expose everything, but that's why I chose some examples for discussion and for reflection. First of all, let me mention strong development in medicine and technology. They have made something what once was unthinkable. Now it is the everyday life of people with disabilities who are allowed to compete even though they do not have a limb or limbs. So a few decades ago, it was some kind of science fiction, and now it's everyday life of disabled people. So it's really the excellent, and that strong development in medicine and technology. It's really a miracle. So regarding that, as a consequence, we have a phenomenon of human cyborgization. So what is cyborg? What is that process of human cyborgization? Cyborg is, in fact, the formation of a cyborg, a combination of living and non-living. In fact, it's a combination of man as a living organism and an artificial work. In this case, artificial lower extremities. So I also have in next slide some examples. So changes in professional sports are caused by huge changes, more precisely by the progress of medicine and technology in the modern age. So let me expose some well-known, I think it's a well-known example. It is Oscar Pistorius, and we can see that blades, in fact, artificial lower extremities. So these are some kind of blades we can see. And here in this photo, I think it's some kind of competition. Maybe it's not, I'm not sure that it was a really competition, or it's some kind of maybe parade or some kind of friendly match. So we can see that here is Oscar Pistorius with blades, but also we have that normal, in fact, so-called regular athletes with normal lower extremities. And in this case, we have that, so we can see the combination of living and non-living here with these blades. And also we have also well-known example here in the Republic of Serbia. This is Natasha Kovacevich, and she is a basketball player. Now I think that she's former basketball player, maybe she's a coach now. And unfortunately, after a car accident, she lost her lower leg. In fact, lower extremities, one left, as we can see here, left leg, and also she has some kind of artificial leg. We can see, I think it's not a blade, it's different from this artificial leg, but also she could play basketball after that car accident with that artificial leg. And now I think that she's a basketball coach, and also she wrote a book under the title Steps after that car accident and after getting this artificial leg. So as I mentioned here, really a few decades ago, something like this was some kind of science fiction. Now it is the everyday life of people with disabilities who are allowed to compete even though they do not have a limb or limbs. So I think that it's a very, very important social fact, not only for bioethics of sport, but also for the sociology of sport. And now we can see some ethical dilemmas, and the reason why this issue is very important for contemporary bioethics of sport and also sociology of sport. Cyborgization raises a number of ethical questions. For example, how to achieve fairness in competition between natural and cyborgized athletes, whether natural and cyborgized athletes may compete at all, or whether cyborgization creates artificial cyborgized winners, etc., etc. So I'm not sure, but according some biomechanical researches, cyborg athletes like Pistorius are faster than regular athletes. So I suggest you to check this information or to find some research. And I mentioned these questions, but there are no final answers to these and similar questions because huge and unstoppable changes in technology and medicine directly affect changes in sports, in professional sports, but also in recreational sports. Why not? Opening numerous bioethical and sociological questions, in fact, ethical dilemmas that deserve serious analysis. Also, I'm going to expose in brief regarding the time here for this presentation, the problem of transgender athletes. This problem is becoming visible in contemporary professional sports, such as the Kalu Mansi and or Hannah Mansi case. So in brief, Kalu Mansi is an Australian handball player who played for the national handball team in 2013 and who changed his gender in 2016. So now his name is Hannah. So that's why we call it Hannah Mansi case. And she started training with women national handball team. It's interesting to mention that you can see the height and weight of Hannah, but she meets all the rules and the requirements of International Sports Federation. So according to the sports law, everything is regular because her testosterone level is below the limit set by the International Olympic Committee, and she has had a 12-month hormone therapy. So according to sports law, everything is regular, but according to ethics, is it regular? So is it fair? For example, my colleague and me, we had one question in our paper regarding the ethical committees in sport and the process of bioethicalization in sport. How ethically is it for someone with a body and dimensions of an adult tall man to play for the women national team, regardless the testosterone level? So this is just one question. So these are some photos of Hannah, and this is I think that the representation, handball representation now, and this is Hannah, and this was also handball representation when Hannah was Kalum. So just want to mention that gap between sports law and sports ethics. So according to law, everything is regular, but according to ethics and the sport ethics and ethical principle in sport, is it regular, or where is ethics in this situation? So these are some questions for reflection of this complex sports issue and also complex bioethical issue. Also, we have the third example regarding the problem of so-called technological doping. Technological doping refers not only to the improvement of sports equipment, but also to, for example, the quality of the running track, and which may be one of the reasons for numerous athletic records on the recent Olympic Games in Tokyo. So these are some, I don't know, some authors that noticed that the problem of technological doping, and according to some journalists, but also some athletes, the quality of the running track may be one of the reasons for that numerous athletic records. So I don't have an answer for this question, but this is also the question for bioethics of sport and for sociology of sport and for bioethicists of sport and for the sociologists of sport. Let's see some what some athletes think about the new running trace, the quality of the running track. Miracle is running track in Tokyo. It is a product of the Mondo company. It is compared to the, so we can see it's very expensive, but that's why the quality is the highest level, I suppose. And it is compared to the trampoline. Athletes have the feeling of bouncing and jumping slightly while running. Sydney McLaughlin said something like this. I will going to read this. You can feel how you bounce. Some other tracks absorb your movements and steps, but this one regenerates them. It just brings them back. So said Sydney McLaughlin, the world record holder. So before the games. So obviously, as a sociologist of sport, I think that technological doping, is could also be one of the important issue for bioethics of sport and for sociology of sport, and this is also the result of unstoppable development of technology. So we have to think, as a sociologist of sport, we have to think about that. We have to think about new ethical dilemmas, which are the consequences of that unstoppable development of technology. So we can also, in fact, the new questions rise, like what will going to happen with professional sport in future, for example, etc., etc. So I think that this is also a good example for the bioethics of sport and for the sociology of sport, and we have to think about that as a consequence of that unstoppable development of technology in contemporary global world, in contemporary global society. So let's mention some possible solutions. Do we have possible solutions for mention the 3 examples and for other similar examples and new problems? I'm going to mention that possibility regarding the establishing of ethics committee in sports as the bioethical bodies which consider the gap between law and ethics. So that's why I'm going to show you again this slide regarding sports law. Everything is regular according to sports law, but the other side, we have that gap between law. In this situation, it's sport law and sports ethics. So with my colleague, I exposed that that issue regarding establishing of ethics committee in sports and the process of bioethicalization of sport. And you can find that paper in the list of references here. And to criticize it or to have to you know, to form your own opinion regarding that possibility or that possible solution. Future ethics committees in sport may be specific bioethical bodies that will seriously consider such and similar mentioned example and provide, that is important, and provide valid, acceptable solutions that will not violate the ethical principles of sport. So that's the most important thing, not violate the ethical principles of sport. Mentioned examples reflect the complexity of professional sports, which is increasingly conditioned by the mentioned unstoppable development of technology and both medicine. The given examples and the newly arised ethical dilemmas and current problems are the burning meeting points between bioethics as a broad interdisciplinary field, and on the other side, the professional sports as a complex, multidimensional socio-cultural and historical phenomena. So I underline that meeting points and the fact that in this moment we don't have answers for all these questions, but obviously we can state that these are some new ethical dilemmas. These are some new problems like consequence of mentioned unstoppable development of technology and medicine. So I will conclude with the fact that unstoppable development of technology and medicine is a social fact, and that social fact affects our global society, our society here in Serbia, here in the region, and affects professional sports. But also it may affect also recreational sport or physical education of pupils, so the whole physical culture system. But in these situations, I mentioned those 3 examples regarding professional sports, and also I will conclude with that possibility of establishing of ethics committee in sports as the bioethical bodies, and also regarding that, we also have to keep in mind the process of bioethical education for future medical professionals or different sport professionals, for also sociologists of sport. So they, with that bioethical education, they could be real professionals for the membership of the future ethics or ethical committees in sports. So these are this is the list of references that I used for this plenary lecture, and I will just I'm going to thank you now, and I'm finishing this lecture. This is my email, and I will be here for your questions if you can, any questions, any suggestions. Also, if you want to criticize that these exposed issues here, the idea of ethical committees in sports. So thank you again. It was really great honor to be the part of this international scientific conference. Thank you.